join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 is to approve today's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move item 3.
Second. Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on today's agenda? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 4 is to approve the previous meeting minutes.
Move the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 5 is to approve the drainage claims. We have 2. First one is turned in for Drainage District number 5, roll-in section 35, and it is to connect up to the dredge ditch, roughly 60 feet, turned in by Brett Monson. And the second one is Drainage District number 52, roll-in section 28, and we have sloughing in the dredge ditch, and it's turned in by Webster County Roads.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve item 5. Second.
Motion and a second on drainage claims. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 6 is to receive and place on file the hiring of Emma Halligan, WIC clerk, full-time, effective December 3rd, 2018, at a rate of $15 per hour, per recommendation of Carrie Prescott, Director, Webster County Public Health.
Chairman, I make a motion to move item number 6.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on item number 6? It is corrected to $15 an hour.
Thank you.
She's still going to be helping out Ted
During the
until
transition.
we get a new person in.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 7 is to approve and authorize Director of Human Resources to fill the HR and PZ clerk full-time vacancy in Human Resources and Planning and Zoning due to the transfer of Emma Halligan to the Webster County Public Health.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move item 7.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
So Carrie Prescott, Director of the Webster County Health Department. In this transition, so what had happened was Emma was providing us some part-time care or part-time administrative roles at the department. She learned what we were doing over there as far as our WIC program, and we had the opportunity to hire for our WIC program. She wanted to participate because that's where her passion is. We spoke with Ted, tried to organize this transition. We have an agreement with Ted that we can share her until the county finds somebody to that is appropriate in what you would need as well. So it's not that she won't be available. We will just work out a schedule. So you can take your time and hire the right person for the county as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on item number 7? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 8 is to accept and place on file the resignation of Wyatt Opperman, Correctional Officer, full-time, effective November 23rd, 2018, per the recommendation of Steve Ellifritz, Jail Administrator.
Move item 8,
Mr. Chairman, second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on item number 8? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 9 is a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the current county budget for fiscal year 2018-2019. It is 10:05. Do we have any written questions or comments? Questions or comments from the floor?
Can we explain?
Yes.
Just in a nutshell, Dan has received a grant through Veterans Affairs, and so the $10,000 in expenses and then again a $10,000 in revenue is for that. The other part are the inspection reimbursement, $120,000. That would be for Dakota Access. They're still continuing to work on inspecting lines and doing stuff in Webster County. Then the FICA and wellness is due to our program, the wellness program, when we're at budget time, we were paying it instead of through the state, and so that's why we're amended for that. $854,000 is the farm to market road, that you guys had approved for, payment from the TIP funds. And then the $150,000 is the land, the additional that we had budgeted some, but just not quite enough for the land purchase, so. And that totals the expenses of $1,153,141. And then our revenue, the Dakota Access, we get refunded back the $120,000. We've got a loan that we're going to be taken out for the $490,000, and then the $10,000 for the grant. So that gives us $620,000 coming back in revenues.
Questions or comments? All righty, so we'll close the public hearing at 10:06. Item number 10, to approve and authorize the chair to sign an amendment to the current county budget for fiscal year 2018-19, and further to approve increase in department appropriation expenses for Department of Veterans Affairs in the amount of $10,000, Department 99 inspections, wellness, farm to market road, and economic development in the amount of $1,153,141, and increase department appropriations for revenues for Department 21 Veterans Affairs in the amount of $10,000, Department 99 resource, project, and long-term debt in the amount of $610,000.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to move item 10. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on item number 10? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 10 carries. Item number 11 is to receive and place on file post-election audit report, auditor certification for November 6, 2018 general election.
Chairman, make a motion to move item 11.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on item number 11? If you want to explain.
So again, this year, the Secretary of State's office had elected, instead of doing a percentage of post audits, it was gonna turn out to be about 90% of the precincts had to be audited. So they elected to go ahead and have each one of the 99 counties do a post-election audit. The day after the election, the Secretary of State's office did a raffle, and they drew names as to what precinct we would be doing. We audited precinct number 3, Fort Dodge, the Lions Den. And at that audit, we had 5 people, 2 of my staff and 3 people that were election workers that came in. And they ended up counting the ballots. First, they sorted it into each one of the government agencies, the one that we audited. So they sorted them into the different categories, and they counted each one. And then they matched everything back up with the tape that the machine printed out that night. And everything came out 100%. So we were in very good shape. Very pleased with that.
Great. Congratulations. And I did hear a lot of compliments on the training of your staff this year. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on item number 11? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 12 is to approve a Class B native wine liquor license for 2237 160th Street, Fort Dodge.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move item 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for item number 12. Do we have any questions or comments? We have dram shop and everything.
Yes, we do. Everything's in place.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 13 is to approve Class C liquor license for Willow Ridge Golf Course, 1788 Madison Avenue, Fort Dodge.
Move item 13, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion and a second. All paperwork is on.
Everything's in place again.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 13 carries. Item number 14 is to receive and place on file your management plan for Carter Finisher Farm, 1195 340th Street, Galway.
Mr. Chairman, motion to move item 14. Second.
Motion and a second.
He checked the boxes, he changed his crop rotation, and he checked the box on his 4-year manure management plan.
Okay. Questions or comments on item number 14? All in favor?
Aye.
opposed? The motion carries. Item number 15 is the Executive Director, Aaron McHone, Berry Hill Center.
Good morning, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Aaron McHone, and I am the Executive Director of the Berry Hill Center here in town. And the reason why I'm here today, as a lot of you know, there's been a lot of discussion about Webster County and should we stick with CSS or should we try a different MHDS region. Now, the Berry Hill Center actually has offices in 3 different mental health regions. We work with CSS, we work with Rolling Hills, and we work with Central Iowa Community Services. We have great relationships with all 3, and I will not be making a recommendation for one of the 3 for you guys this morning. However, as the largest mental health services provider in the county, I thought it was a good time for me to come before you today and just share with you a little bit about what we do and how our relationship works with county mental health regions, so you guys have the information you need to make whatever decision that you choose to do. So we'll go ahead and click the next slide. All right, there's a good-looking man up there.
There you go.
All right. So I already introduced myself. I also have a couple other hats with Unity Point Health. I am the ACO executive sponsor, so that means that I help us transition from a fee-for-service based on the way we get paid from insurance companies to a fee-for-value, where we're actually paid to try to keep people healthy and out of the hospital as opposed to being incentivized to get them into the hospital more frequently. In that role, I also sit on the senior team of the Fort Dodge region, so I report directly to our CEO. And probably my 2 biggest titles is that I am a father and a husband. Father of 3, husband of 1. However, I do struggle with dyslexia at times, so sometimes I introduce myself as the husband of 3 and the father of 1. That typically gets me in a little bit of trouble. Go ahead and go to the next one. So the agenda for today is to share with you what Berry Hill does, whom Berry Hill serves, how Berry Hill is funded, and then I'll stick around for however many questions y'all have for me. All right. All right, well, it's important to note as we move further and further away from when Dr. Leroy Berry Hill practiced, that Berry Hill is one word. I don't know how often I see people separate it as 2 different words. And our building is built on a hill, but no, there were never any berries on that hill. We, of course, are named after our founder and lead psychiatrist for about 40 years, Dr. Leroy Berry Hill. I think everyone who's sitting at this table probably knows the name, but let me just say he's an amazing, amazing man. And I could go on and on about stories about Dr. Berry Hill, but for the sake of time I won't. But there's a reason why we name ourselves after him. He did a lot of great work for this community. We are an accredited community mental health center. We are also a licensed substance use disorder facility. We also have a primary care clinic, a CLIA-waived lab, and an on-site pharmacy. Now, a few years ago, all we did was community mental health. And what happened is a patient came in to get psychiatry, we would take their blood pressure, and we find out that they have some hypertension. So we'd say, you really need to go see your primary care doc and get this checked out, and the patient would not. So we'd make a referral, and across the street at Unity Point Clinic, maybe to see Dr. Wallace, and they'd go and then they'd leave our facility with that nod. And then they'd come back, and they still had hypertension, and they never actually saw Dr. Wallace. We had the same issues when we had a patient who needed a lab, maybe to get a lipid panel checked or to check their lithium levels. A lot of the medications we give, we need accurate labs to make sure that we're not doing them any harm. So we make a referral for them to go next door to the Trinity lab over at the hospital, get their lab work done, and then come back so we can better treat them. And we found again that a lot of people did not follow up. The same goes for substance use disorders, same goes for on-site pharmacy. Actually, one thing that's interesting about pharmacy is, I don't know if you guys know this, but there is a metric called possession daily ratio, and the idea is how many days worth of pills are you prescribed versus how many do you actually have in your possession. So if you have a 30-day supply of medication, how many of those 30 days did you actually have that medication in your possession? The national average is 50%. So, and a lot of that's because a lot of scripts are never filled. So you can do a whole lot of great medical services, you can be a great psychiatrist, but at the end of the day, if that patient isn't taking the medication, it's going to be ineffective. So by having this on-site pharmacy, we can actually assess how many days the patient had the medication in their possession, and we're hitting about 95% for patients that use that on-site pharmacy. 3 psychiatrists, 6 nurse practitioners, 14 therapists. We have 10 different offices across 9 counties, providing services in 35 schools with a $5.2 million budget a year. There's really 4 things that we hope to accomplish at Berry Hill. The first is integration. We believe that the head is connected to the body, and therefore you can't treat someone's mental health issues without also looking at their physical issues. So things like low blood sugars does impact your behaviors. And likewise, things like anxiety causes me to have low back pain, and the two are just connected. So one of the things we've tried to do is we've tried to integrate the two wherever possible. In many ways, that's been by bringing the services on site because in our history, it hasn't been overly effective to try to send people away and hope that they go get the treatment they need and come back. That's been a hard thing for us to negotiate. So in many cases, it's been bringing it on site. But we at Berry Hill do not have the resources to do it all by ourselves either. So in many cases, it's also connecting to the existing resources. Carrie Prescott asked that I give her a quick shout out before I came up here. So this is your shout, Carrie. We partner great with Webster County Public Health along with several others, the schools, the clinics, the hospital, you name it. Long-term care is something we do provide services in 3 of the 4 long-term care facilities here in Fort Dodge. So we believe that we need to integrate and work well with our partners. Now, we will not be able to do that if we don't develop trust with those partners. And what that trust tends to look like is when we send you a referral, when Carrie sends me a referral, she wants to make sure that the patient has access to care. So the second thing that we've really put a lot of concerted effort into is trying to increase access to care for mental health services here in the community. I'll show you a graph and a little bit of how we've done with regards to that, but that's been something that we track very, very closely, and we've done a lot of recruitment of providers over the last 5 years to make that happen. The third thing is 5 years ago, the Berry Hill Center primarily served adults. That was really what we were all about. In fact, the director at that time said that we are the adult mental health center in the area, which is true. We still serve adults, but we went back and did some research, and we found out that 100% of the adults that we were serving used to be children. It's absolutely true. I checked the stats twice, Nick. Don't worry about it. But the idea behind that is that we can continue to wait for these adults to come to our doorstep and do our best to treat them. But oftentimes, the issues that cause them to have a major mental illness occurred from trauma in their childhood. So if we don't get down to it and try to do some earlier interventions, we will never get ahead of the curve. So that's why we put some concerted effort in child and family services. That's why now we're in 35 different schools with the assistance of some DCAT grant funding. We also have brought on some specialized training resources for our staff to provide some treatment modalities to children. And I also want to say, it says children and families, and just let me just quick get on my soapbox and say, you cannot treat a child without reaching to the whole family. That is why oftentimes group care for kids isn't overly effective. Oftentimes you see kids go to placement. They get better quick because kids are incredibly resilient. But then if no work's been done with the family dynamic at home and they go back into, at times of challenging, you'll see them regress just as quickly as they progressed. So you really got to reach out to the family. So we've been trying to do more by way of parenting education Last thing up there is, of course, we can't do that without our employees, so we're trying to tackle that and trying to be the employer of choice in the area. So this is just that access graph. Each dot there is a month. The first dot would be January of 2014. In January of 2014, we were 68 days out for a new patient psychiatric evaluation. There were many things that we did to bring that down. The first thing that we did is we didn't have enough boots on the ground, so we entered into basically some locum or rent-a-doc situations with some companies while we worked on recruiting our own. You see a little blip there, about 6 months. That is a transition where we were transitioning away from the rent-a-docs because we had recruited our own. We didn't time it perfectly, and we had a little blip there. But for the most part, we've been able to go along for the last 4 years or so with same or close to same-day access. Our goal is to make sure that line always stays under 7 days. Go on to the next slide. So who do we serve, or whom do we serve? We do serve the entire community, so we don't just consider the patients that are coming into the Berryhill Center as being the only people that we're engaged with. A while back, there was a company in town that had a tragedy. Long story short, we were able to send a counseling team there to talk to their employees. None of them were necessarily Berryhill patients, but we were able to provide that on-site support. We've done similar things with the schools. We try to do lots of education, whether it be suicide prevention or whatever. We don't just consider the patient that's in front of us coming in for an insurance billable visit as being the only people we serve. We're there for the entire community. As far as patients that we serve, we do serve all ages. In the last year, we had a patient that was under 2. We had a patient that was 101, so we served the gamut in terms of ages. And then we also serve the gamut in terms of complexity of their mental illness. So we have some patients who are struggling with some mild anxiety and do need to see someone, but it's not a chronic long-term issue. And then we have other patients who have chronic schizophrenia who we also treat. So we pretty much treat that whole range of symptoms. And one of the things that we've incorporated is a no wrong door philosophy. That means that if there's someone who comes to us who maybe isn't the ideal candidate for our services, maybe they'd be better served at a LifeWorks or something like that, just with what symptoms they're expressing. We connect with them and make sure that they are transitioned appropriately. We don't slam the door on their face and say, you're coming in the wrong door, you need to go elsewhere. We try to stay away from that wherever possible. So this is just a little picture of the number of unduplicated patients that we've served. And this data is based on actual insurance claims. So when I talked to you before about the employer in town, those employees are not included in this because there wasn't an insurance claim that went with their service. So we've gone from serving 2,600 patients in 2014 to January through October 31st of this year, we were serving 4,800 patients. If we keep that projection, we will hit 5,800 by the end of the year. We will not hit that projection. And the reason why we won't is because these are unduplicated lives. So what we see is that towards the end of the year, the numbers creep up less because if they've been seen during that time period, we're not going to count them again. So I anticipate us being somewhere around 52 or 5,300 by the end of the year. And this just shows you a little bit of the type of patients we serve. The first is broken out by gender. You can see 43% male, 57% female. Now that does not mean that females tend to have more mental health issues than men. In fact, the reverse is true, guys. Guys actually are much more likely to commit suicide than females, but women are more likely to seek treatment. So listen to your wives when they tell you you need treatment. The next just breaks it down by age. Probably the biggest thing to note there is that 0 to 17 is 19% of our unduplicated patients, and that was almost non-existent 5 years ago. So that's been where we've been growing the fastest. Go ahead and go on to the next. Our headquarters are in Webster County, and so are a disproportionate share of our patients. We are, again, in several surrounding communities, but we do have more patients who reside in Webster County who seek treatment than those elsewhere, which is normal. This is where our building is. This is where most of our staff are, et cetera. So we're at 52% Webster County residents as far as the people that access services in the last year. And the next just show you the number of patients and their primary insurance. One of the things to note there, and I think sometimes this is overlooked, is that we actually have more people getting Berry Hill services who have commercial insurance than we do Medicaid. So we're at 44% commercial. Now later on, you're going to see a graph talking about the revenue side of that. Even though we have fewer patients, fewer people who are on Medicaid, those Medicaid recipients tend to utilize more services. So if you look at it in terms of the finances, we're very heavy Medicaid, but if you look at it in terms of just people who are on insurance, we're going to be not as strong. Now you're going to see CSS up there at 1%. And that should be noted. The reason why that percentage is so small is because in January 1 of 14, Medicaid expanded in Iowa to cover up to 138% of the federal poverty level. So CSS's mandate in county and all county regions' mandate is 150% or less. Now counties can go above that if they choose to, but that's the mandate, 150% of the federal poverty level or less. So the window of patients that fall between 139% of the federal poverty line and 150% of the federal poverty line is relatively small. And we don't just see this with CSS, the same is true for Rolling Hills and Central Iowa Community Services. And from when I speak to my partners, the same holds true for other parts of the state as well. All right, so how are we funded? So our budget is really broken down into two different areas. The first is direct fee-for-service billings. This is a patient that comes in, sees a doctor, and there's an insurance bill that follows. That is about 85% of our budget. The other area would be other revenue, and that includes all grants that we have. We have a fair number of grants at the Berry Hill Center. It also includes performance indicator payments. So we have a contract with our managed care entities here in Iowa to say if we can keep patients from having readmissions, so maybe they come out of a psych unit and they don't have to go back in the next 30 days, if we can keep them from having to go to a hospital stay because we're more proactive on the outpatient side, we can pull down performance indicator payments, and we've been very successful in that. Another area is rural outreach payments. This has been a big help to us and a help that CSS and other county regions have done. The truth is there is the volume in Webster County to be able to support the overhead costs. But when I go up to our Pocahontas office, when we have 8 patients seen there and we're paying for the provider to get there, we're paying for the office to be manned, we're paying for rent and such, it just doesn't make itself work in rural areas. Now, regions are responsible to assure that there is care in rural areas, and one of the ways that they do that is with rural outreach payments. Then I also already talked about some community debriefing and training. We do charge for that, and that makes up part of that other revenue as well. The only thing I would add to this slide is this is based on our 2018 budget. Now our 2018 actuals are actually coming in at about 18% other revenue and 82% direct fee for service, and that's because we were awarded a grant that we didn't budget for. We got a delightful surprise last May. So as far as that first bucket, the direct fee for service, this is interesting because even though this isn't necessarily true of the number of people coming in on insurance, what we find is that 61% of our direct service is Medicaid, another 19% is Medicare. So you put those two together, you're talking about 80% government payers. Now, if you've been in healthcare, you know that government payers don't tend to pay quite as well, and that's where the business is really tough. We're 12% well marked. This slide does not break out county regional funding, but we'll get to that next. But this just shows you kind of our payer mix from a dollars standpoint. So how do we work with CSS? And for that matter, we have similar arrangements with Rolling Hills and with Central Iowa Community Services. Basically, they agree to pay for some direct services of patients who fall within that gap. And the gap is typically the 139% to 150% of the federal poverty level. However, again, some mental health regions do go over that. Another thing that they kind of help out with some gap funding is oftentimes a patient will forget to turn in their Medicaid application on time, so they have to do an annual Medicaid application. As a consequence, there may be a month where they're not covered by Medicaid. Oftentimes, CSS and other county regions really stand in to help the patient through that gap month while we're getting them re-engaged with Medicaid. So the direct fee for service on our budget is $24,000 for CSS, and that's our budget for state fiscal year 2019. And this is where it gets a little complicated because Berry Hill has a budget that runs January to December. CSS and most government entities run July to June. So this is based on a contract change that we had. This hasn't all been done with the actuals. I could try to get that to you if you want, but some claims are out there waiting to be billed and other claims are waiting to be paid. So we're budgeting $24,000 from CSS. The other revenue, we're actually budgeting about $44,000 on, and that's primarily to help offset the cost of some of those rural sites where we deliver care. All said and done, we have about $68,174 expected to come from CSS in this state fiscal year. And one of the things I want you to hear loud and clear from me is thank you. So I realize I have there 1.3% of our annual budget. I don't want that to be interpreted as, well, it's just 1.3%, because the truth is margins are slim in this business, so we appreciate all the support that we get. That being said, the region discussion does not impact Berry Hill quite as significantly as it may impact others, because the way our budget works, we are more reliant on Medicaid, Medicare, and commercial insurances than perhaps others in the area. So that's why you haven't been getting lots and lots of emails from me about this whole discussion, but I did think it was important for me to come here and share with you how this works. Now, it should be noted that along with some of the financial challenges of CSS as of late, this year's contract was a 26% cut from the previous years. That was mainly because CSS used to help support a 24-hour crisis line that the Berry Hill Center offers. And with new contracts, with some of the financial hardships that were hitting CSS, they did nix that service. We thought long and hard about it, and we decided that service is necessary for this community. So we continue to provide that, and there has been no changes in the way we deliver care in light of that contract change. And we're hopeful that that as things progress, and depending on what this board chooses to do, that maybe that's something that CSS would take a look at. Redoing in the future once we get past these current financial hardships. So this is kind of me just saying, this is what I think is really helpful about a region. In my opinion, it is more helpful for a region to focus on infrastructure as opposed to direct fee-for-service payments, because most patients who qualify for county funding are eligible for Medicaid. Oftentimes what happens is a patient doesn't have insurance, and all they really need is help getting the application done. Now, there is generally a break there because Medicaid doesn't generally start the day that you submit the application. Usually it's a 30-day window or whatnot, but a lot of these patients who are unfunded are eligible. They just don't know they're eligible, and no one has sat down with them to help them do the application. So I think my 2 cents worth would be, don't put too much focus on the direct transactional service of a patient seeing a doctor, because a lot of times you can find another payment source for that. I would rather encourage this body to consider more encouragement towards things that aren't funded through Medicaid, specifically infrastructure to start up new services which are mandated under House File 2456. And that includes primarily, and we've all talked about it, the Access Center, the Crisis Center, ACT teams going statewide. We in Webster County have had one for some time, but they are not statewide today. Now, one of the challenges with that, as you guys probably know, is we don't know what the rules are for these new services yet. They're still being determined by the state, so it's hard for us to put a proposal together to say this is what it's going to cost to staff an access center, because we don't really have any specific state definitions on what an access center is. We do know that the state has said that once you get it up and going, whatever that is, they will fund the ongoing expenses for Medicaid patients who need to be treated there. So it kind of goes back up to that direct service. I think you're ahead to think more about the infrastructure and payments. Executive Order 2, that is the Children's Mental Health Services Work Group. They have put forward their new plan. In the plan, it does say that essentially the children's side of the mental health system will likely be coming under the mental health regions as well. So it won't just be adults in the future if this plan actually becomes law. So the next step on that is taking that work plan to the legislature and seeing what the legislature wants to do this coming spring. And that's pretty much all I have for you. Any questions, concerns? Carrie? Now's your time to yell at me.
I actually do, well, if you have questions.
Of course you do.
I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I wanted to also tailor this down into a county perspective, is not only are they a Unity Point Berry Hill Center, but they're also an integrated community partner. So what he failed to mention is that we partner on several grants that allow us to do our public health mission in coordination with what they're trying to accomplish at the Berry Hill and at the greater Unity Point. When they say there's a no wrong door policy or a no wrong door, that's exactly the same philosophy that our public health has. And so through joint care coordination and through joint navigation system and a joint model, it's a soft handoff between anything happening with, especially with our mental health center and the Berry Hill Center, with their team, with our team. And so we have weekly meetings. We have, Aaron and I have strategic planning meetings. We sit on each other's boards and provide input on how we need to move forward with any type of programming within Webster County. And so, he's part of our SIM grant. He sits on that. And so it's a two-way street for us. They're a great partner, and it helps when you show that partnership when we're trying to also secure some larger grants.
And those are advisory boards. There'd be some conflict if they were governing boards.
You had mentioned the 24-hour hotline. I thought our region had one.
So that is one of the reasons I think why they nixed it. I can't tell you how the 24-hour hotline is used or if it's used. We know that people around here know our number, and we still receive about 120 calls a month on average on that hotline. So we feel like for us to cut it. Now again, I can't speak to the CSS hotline because I just don't know enough about it. I know it's been in discussion, and I also know that a statewide hotline has been in discussion. A statewide hotline would probably be a really, really good idea because, you know, frankly, if I'm driving out west and I end up in Manson, then I'm going to call a different place. So yeah, we continue to keep ours up, and we get about 120 calls a month.
Questions? Anybody? Brittany, anything to add?
No.
Okay.
So with the 24-hour wait period, will you provide services for anybody in Webster County that has a health problem or a mental health problem?
So the access, I think, is what you're referring to. So that access is for a psychiatric evaluation. There are a couple caveats to this slide in particular. This slide is at any Berry Hill location. I have a separate slide which I could show you for Fort Dodge specifically. But this slide is for any Berry Hill location. This slide does presume adults. We have, again, other data for kids and such. I just showed one slide to not bore you guys. But what we've done is we have essentially assured that we have access by recruiting the providers that we need to serve the community. In addition to that, we have a walk-ins welcome policy, so that if any patient walks into the Berry Hill Center at any time, at the very least, they will be screened for suicide risk, and then if they happen to come in on a day that we have, you know, there's a blip there, you can see 2 or 3 days, at that time they would either be scheduled for that appointment in the future, or we would do something more immediate to ensure their safety. So the top of this slide says non-crisis patient in parentheses. That's because we actually have a separate way to handle crisis patients that come to us. Good question.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 16 is to approve and authorize the chair to sign a permit from Mid-American Energy to extend electrical service to a new duplex at 2417, 2419, 240th Street, and to a single-family homes at 2421 and 2423, 240th Street in Section 9, Township 88 North, Range 28 West of Pleasant Valley Township.
Chairman, make a motion to remove item 16.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on item number 16. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 17 is to approve and authorize the chair to sign a permit from Radar Enterprises to have Mansky Drainage construct 24-inch sub-drain across Yankee Avenue, approximately 200 feet south of 200th Street, between Sections 1, Township 88 North, Range 27 West, Section 6, Township 88 North, Range 26 West, all within Drainage District number 11.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move item 17.
Second. We have a motion and a second on item number 17. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 18 is to approve and authorize the chair to sign permanent and temporary construction easement agreements associated with Bridge Replacement Project BROS SWAP CO 9450 FE 94, located on George Avenue over Spring Creek in Section 1, Township 88 North, Range 30 West of Fulton Township.
Chairman, I'll move item 18. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or comments on item number 18? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 19 is to adopt a resolution number 2018-25, updating weight limit embargoes on bridges.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to remove item 18.
We have a motion and a second. Randy, would you like to explain?
Randy Will, Webster County Engineer, and on March 27th, 2018, was the last time you approved and addressed this matter of embargoed bridges. At that time, there were 45 bridges that need to be embargoed, and the reason today this is on the agenda is we've replaced 5 more bridges and with new structures, and so we're down to 40 bridges, and they're noted on a map, Exhibit A. And I recommend that you approve this resolution, and the resolution will be effective when the signs have been erected, they're taken down in the field. Most of them have been done already. So, and in addition to the 40 that are currently posted, one is under contract right now in the west city limits of Duncombe, and it'll be done next year. And then another one is located on Route D18 west of P71. It's under contract. I assume the contractor will start sometime after early 2019. And in addition, probably before the end of March, my office will prepare and let several more structures that will be replaced with bridges with precast concrete box culverts. I don't have an exact location or number, but I mentioned it'll be 5 or 6, and we'll have those ready and talk about them ahead of time, and you can approve the letting, and we'll go forward with that. Any other questions or comments?
Questions or comments from the floor?
I'd like to thank you for your effort on this. I know it wasn't that long ago. We had 60-some bridges that needed replaced, so we're slowly gaining on this. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a roll call.
People, aye. Left, right.
Campbell, aye.
Carlson, vote aye.
Item 19 passes. It is now the citizens' opportunity to address the board with items not on the agenda.
Good morning. My name is Mackenzie Garner. This is Ann Garvey. We're here on behalf of the Webster County Dispatchers. As most of you may know, we have been kind of in between here with PD, Webster County, Sheriff's Office, going through some stuff right now with trying to outsource with outside company out of New Jersey. So our ultimate goal is to work under the Sheriff's Department, like it was about 10 years ago, before they started splitting every 2 years. So we had a petition that we made up for our first responders that we dispatch for, ourselves and some citizens of the county. The petition states that dispatchers of Webster County Telecommunications Department like to ask the board if they would consider the Webster County Sheriff's Office taking over the dispatchers. We would like to work with the sheriff of Webster County. We're the first responders for Webster County and feel it's in the best interest of the communities. The people who have signed are concerned dispatchers, first responders, and citizens of Webster County who urge you guys to act and save our current employees' jobs. We want to continue to have knowledgeable people that care for our public and work for Webster County. We feel it's not in the best interest to have an outside company come in and take over our dispatch center. We also had an online poll. Well, we didn't. There was an online poll taken at some point with people that were able to vote, if they were in favor or against this company coming in. We got 4% in favor and we got 96% against. So you can kind of see which is outweighing more right now.
How many people responded to that?
There was about there was 1.2 thousand votes against it, and then 53 votes in favor, so there is that.
So we would like to submit the petition.
Give it to the auditor right there.
Okay.
She will receive that, all right. Any other questions, comments from the bar, from the table or the floor?
Have you submitted anything to the commission on this?
As far as,
The telecommunications board, have you submitted anything to them with your request?
no, not at this point. We want to make sure that you guys were all in approval of having our Webster County Sheriff take the Webster County telecommunications dispatchers over again. When I was first hired 27 years ago, I was the last one hired by Sheriff Briggs. And he was always in charge of the dispatchers, the sheriff's office, the jail, and his deputies. And it wasn't until he had 2 strokes, which made it a burden for the chief deputy to take on so many entities. And that's when we started going back and forth between the 2 departments instead of having one significant boss in charge of us.
I would just state for public record that the way this works is we can't do this, what you're asking us to do on our own. Telecommunications is run by a separate board.
Right.
And so it's totally up to them on what happens with telecommunications. I understand that you are correct that it seems to bounce back and forth between who was mostly overseeing it from that board standpoint, whether it's the police department or the sheriff department. And I personally believe that's been a problem, but bouncing back and forth. But just for the simple facts of the matter, like this petition or anything should go to that board.
And
They
we would more than.
Yeah, they would be the ones that would have to decide what to do if they'd even want to explore giving it to the sheriff department. And then this board could decide if they wanted that to happen, but just for clarification.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Do you need us to copy that so you can take those?
Yes,
You want
please.
the originals to go to the commission?
Yes, sure.
Okay. We'll get that taken care of after the meeting. Any other questions or comments from the citizens? Board of Supervisor Committee reports? All right, motion to adjourn.
So,
We have a motion and a second. One last thing, the county will be taking applications for appointments to boards and commissions. We'll have a list on the county website hopefully next week that will show the vacancies and terms that are about to expire. So people that are interested in being appointed to boards or commissions, please go on the county website and fill out the application. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks.